Hello and thank you for joining us at the virtual RWA Dinghy Show. We now welcome Olympian and RWA coach Stevie Morrison, joined by the RWA's Dave Mellor and Tim Cross to launch the new Connect with Coaching video series. Dave and Tim will be ready for your questions, so just type them in the chat box and they'll be ready to answer them for you.
Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Dinghy Show. It's a bit new this year. Of course, we're online. We're making the best of it, and thank you to the RWA for making this happen as we are here. I'm joined this morning by Dave Mellor and Tim Cross, and we're going to introduce Connect with Coaching, which is a fantastic new scheme. I was very lucky to grow up at the ex-sailing club and surrounded by a lot of experienced sailors, national sailors. My father designed a lot of the classes that you'll be out there racing, hopefully over the summer ahead of us. And I think the coaches in these communities, these clubs, these classes are really the lifeblood of our sport. Well, I'm here in Lanzarote actually at the moment. I'm working with Charlotte Dobson and Saskia Tidy. They're going to be racing for Team GB in Japan this summer, out there in Tokyo. And it's a real privilege for me to get to work with these guys. But of course, if it wasn't for the clubs that I've raced, the classes I've raced, same for the girls, we wouldn't be able to be here. So making sure we keep that underneath growth of our sport happening, people enjoying being on the water, that's the main thing. I mean, I love it, and it's great when I get to see the people back in my sailing club in X and how they enjoy just being out on the water and just engaging with the first principles of racing all the way up to the Olympic Games. I think that's what makes such a magical sport. So I can't wait to hear from Dave and Tim how they're going to help us on that journey over this next year as we get to use these incredible new resources they're producing. And ensure that people do keep that enjoyment, skill levels improving, and just having fun on the water. Tim, if you could just give us a bit of an explanation of what these resources actually are.
Okay, so what we're actually launching today are our Connect with Coaching video resources. Now, the principle behind what these actually are is a resource that hopefully illustrates and showcases coaching in practice within a club and class environment. The idea is that they're there to sort of demonstrate coaching techniques, but also illustrate the experience of the learner as well as they discover new skills.
They sound pretty good for me, but who are they really aimed at, Dave?
Well, they're aimed at club coaches and class association coaches, people who are trying to coach somebody to learn to race for the first time or to improve their racing, somebody that might enjoy a club race or maybe the open meeting circuit or even involved in a national circuit. So if there's a coach that's working with that kind of person, these are perfect resources to try and help them with their coaching.
Fantastic.
And I think an example of that in practice, so we're actually launching 3 today, and one of those is, or 2 of them actually going to look at scenarios around coaching different techniques on the start line. One is introducing the foundation skills of the start line. The other one is looking at very much judging your position on the line and developing an understanding of how to effectively use a transit. So we kind of explore what is the skill, and then we actually offer an insight into an activity a coach might actually want to use with their sailors down at their club or at a class training session.
Yeah, I mean, if I could pick up on that, Tim, there's a lot of stuff out on the internet these days, and the RWA produce things over the years that quite often it's just, here is the skill. And what we wanted to do is take it a bit further, because what a really good coach knows is that, okay, this is what the skill looks like. So attack or a jibe or start or some kind of sailing skill. But then what the coach actually adds is, how do you work to get better at that skill? What kind of things can you do in the water that are going to help you get better? And we wanted to bring those resources both together in a video so that somebody would go, okay, that's the skill. This is what I now do as a coach to try and help somebody improve that skill. What kind of training exercises or activities on the water would be really useful? And a lot of coaches give us feedback that they're volunteering for their club or their class association. They don't have a big bank of these type of training exercises that people like Stevie would have in the British sailing team. So we just wanted to start to share that kind of knowledge with coaches so that, when I'm a volunteer coach and I'm on Friday night and I'm thinking about my session for Saturday morning with a load of kids down at the club, I can dip into this resource and actually find some sessions and some types of exercises that I might want to use and just take that little bit of pressure off with my planning. Of course, I have explained that they're all aimed at coaches. Well, actually a sailor sailing their own boat can coach themselves. We can all do self-coaching. So these resources aren't just exclusively for a coach coaching from a motorboat or a rib. These are resources that a sailor might pick up and think about how they're going to coach themselves. So they might take the skill, have a look at it and think, well, what do I need to do to be able to perform that skill? Right, and I also look at the training exercise. How might I set that up at the club or my local piece of water that I sail at? Then how can I replicate that myself from my own boat? So they're not always asking to have a coach on the water and relying on a coach on the water, actually starting to self-coach. These resources are perfectly adequate for that kind of scenario as well.
Well, I know from my little experience of the coaching so far that it's great having all these resources, but how do you actually recommend a coach or a race instructor actually goes around using these?
Okay, so one of the models that the videos look to showcase is very much the sort of the who, the what, and the how as a structure. And one of the things that the videos are helping, hopefully, coaches to understand and develop a greater understanding of, it's really about recognizing sort of the needs and the wants of the sailors that they're actually working with within their club and class environment. And we know that if you're working with a group of sailors, whether that be sort of 6 to 12 with some co-coaches, we know that there's individual needs within the group need. And so very much what we try to do is illustrate that you can take a skill, but actually it's creating the bite-sized chunks of that skill that allow sailors to sort of work on specific techniques. Some may call that learning objectives or a process goal, supported by the coach. So actually they're working towards a greater understanding of the skill, which will hopefully improve their all-round competency. Therefore, they get to enjoy racing on the club or class circuit.
Yeah, if I could just chip in on that, Tim.
Yeah.
One of the frameworks that we often use when we're trying to plan a session is who are you coaching, what are you coaching, and how are you going to help them to learn it? And as Tim's identified, these video resources are created in that structure. So hopefully they'll kind of walk a coach through the kind of thinking that any coach should be doing when they're planning a session. What questions do they need to answer? So the first question is, who am I coaching and what do they need to learn? What do they want to learn? And that's so the first part of the videos is often trying to explain what that might look like for an average kind of sailor. What do these people need to learn? So how far away from the start line are they typically? And you might start to recognize patterns yourself in the video. And then the next question really is, well, so what is it that they need to learn? Well, they might need to learn to accelerate the boat better. They might need to learn better time and distance. They might need to learn how to use transits, just taking that starting as an example. So that's what they need to learn. That's the next question in the planning framework. And then the final question is, well, how am I going to help them to learn that? We could say sheeting early, or we could say get a transit, but that's probably not enough. So what kind of experience can we create on the water that allows a sailor to learn that skill of shooting in at the right time so they hit the line at full speed, or how to actually use a transit on the start line in a real situation. So we're trying to present the videos in a way that follows a logical sequence of thinking as if you were planning a session. Who am I coaching? What do they need to learn? And how can I help them learn it?
It's funny you say that, Dave. I first met Tim when I was working as a sailing instructor at Spinnaker Sailing Centre in Exmouth. And of course, when you're a dinghy instructor, one of the first things you get told are the 5 essentials. And I think probably maybe took them a little bit for granted, and you can forget those basics, and you roll forward to 2003 when I would have first met you, funnily enough, Dave, when I was sort of just joining the Olympic sailing scene, and I was in the 49er, and I was lucky enough to have a training day where Paul Brotherton came out coaching me. And he just, we'd been struggling a little bit, and he sat behind us as we were going upwind, and he just said, "You're not sailing the boat flat. Yeah, you've got heel in here. You're not passionate enough about keeping the boat flat. You've got to keep the boat flat. Flat is fast." And he just drilled that into us for an hour or so, and that was all we saw of him. But gave us that passion to want to keep the boat flat. And I put that 1 hour of coaching as the single most important thing that ever happened to my sailing career, in terms of going from a reasonably talented RYA development squad sailor to eventually winning the 49er Worlds and being lucky enough to represent Great Britain at the Olympic Games. And then funnily enough, we've just been out on the water today, and now I'm the slightly long in the tooth with a few wrinkles, that's the coach getting to coach two girls who are, you know, literally top team in the world. They were second at last year's World Championship. And you know what we've been working on today? We've been working on keeping the boat flat with an absolute passion, and how hard that is now. They're doing it in far harder conditions than I was, because we've got a huge swell out here. But from all the way from those 5 essentials to me as a sailor, to me as a coach, it's that passion to keep the boat flat, which is, you know, just a huge thing. And I think coaches can just have such a fantastic input, and it you know, it doesn't have to be these magical tricky things. It can be the most simple of things that can make the biggest of difference. And you know, it really rings true for me, that right back to those 5 essentials that when I was a cocky 18-year-old I probably slightly ignored, and now I realize basically the 5 essentials.
Excellent. Thank you, Stevie, for that insight. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because obviously that leads us into sort of what are the core competencies of the racing sailor. And this is certainly something that we've tried to illustrate again through the video series, and we certainly will with the future releases as they're produced and published. And what we've simply done is just broken the core competencies across 5 areas, and they would be starting, boat speed, strategy, tactics, and boat handling. And what we're helping the club and the class coach identify, and also the sailors that view these videos, is that you can break these skills down into those different competencies that allow them to work towards becoming the competent racer that they desire.
I mean, I'll pick up on that, Tim. No matter where you are on your journey as a sailor, whether you're just starting out, learning to sail, learning to race, whether you're like Charlotte and Sass going to the Olympic Games and trying to win a medal, you're only ever focusing on those core competencies, your starting, your speed, your strategy, tactics, and boat handling. And those things will follow you all the way through your sailing career. And you just keep focusing on those and trying to hone those skills to a higher level. So the video does focus on these basics, and the videos are cut into those pillars, if you like, or core competencies as we've described them. If I was a coach, there's lots of different ways I could use these resources, but one probably common approach that you might see with a lot of people is trying to use the resource to identify what it is they actually need to learn. So I'll give you a real example. So we've got a video coming out which is to do with leeward marks, and what you'll see with leeward marks is quite a common thing where people try to round the leeward mark and they usually end up with a boat in between them and the mark, or they'd end up in a position where as they come around the leeward mark, they're in somebody else's dirty wind. So straight away they're on the back foot for the next beat, and that's quite common. So we'll show examples of that kind of problem that somebody might have with their sailing, or the problem that they're trying to overcome. So there might be a moment of, aha, that looks like me in there. So that's the first step. The second step is then, well, what does a good leeward mark rounding actually look like? So then we've got some video footage that shows you the skill being executed in a really good way. So somebody who's able to position a boat to make sure that they're not trapped outside of the mark and there isn't somebody between them, or to show a position of a boat as it comes out of the mark so that they're not forced into dirty wind and then forced attack. So we'll show you what success looks like. So now you know what you're aiming at. So whether you're self-coaching or whether you're coaching somebody else, both of these are completely appropriate. And then the final bit is, well, okay, so now I know what I need to learn and what's relevant to me, but how am I actually going to do that? And what we will do in the videos is actually show you the physical exercise on the water that a typical coach might do with some sailors to try and improve that skill. So using the leeward mark example, we might see a situation where a coach sets people off on a run down towards a leeward mark, maybe with just 1 or 2 boats to begin with to take the pressure off, allowing some people opportunities to round the mark, but only with a small amount of pressure. And as they get more skillful and add in more boats, it becomes an exercise that a lot of people will know as leeward mark mayhem, where it feels quite like mayhem because there's lots of boats coming into the market at a similar time. But if you build up progressively step by step, that will feel very realistic and feel very achievable, being able to deal with that situation. So that's just one example of how somebody might use it, by identifying what they need to learn, identifying what success looks like, and then identifying a really good training exercise or activity that they could do to improve that skill.
Well, I've got to say, a bit of leeward mark mayhem. I can remember my fair share of those situations. So that sounds like great. Can't wait to see it. But Tim, where do I actually get to see that video?
Okay, so the video series is being launched on the RWA Dinghy Racing channel in the coaching zone. We're starting off with 3 videos being launched this weekend. One around the tactical situation at the Leeward Mark that we've just described, and then 2 with the start line focus. One looking at line transits and judging the line, and then one looking at developing the foundation skills to build confidence in a start line environment.
That's fantastic, and these resources sound amazing. But in and amongst our RYA network, are there any additional supporting resources out there for coaches to help them?
Yes, so the RYA coach development team during the past 12 months has sort of been revising and developing a range of programs that we can use to support club and class coaches. The first one I'll mention is the RYA Learning Network online platform, for which we've invited our community of race coach level 2, race coach level 3 coaches to join, and it's an opportunity for us to share with them experiences and coaching stories and further examples of activities that they can use to support the learning and development of their sailors.
So in addition to the RWA Learning Network, we're also offering some programs that can be run at clubs or within class associations. So an example of that is Discover Coaching and Instructing. So Discover Coaching and Instructing is really an opportunity for somebody to dip the toe in and have a go at coaching or instructing, just to see whether they're interested or not. It's not a course with a certificate at the end. There's no pass or fail. What will happen is one of our team will turn up at a club or on behalf of the class association, we'll run a half-day experience where we'll walk and talk you through a typical coaching scenario. And if you feel confident enough and you want to have a go, then there'll be little bite-sized opportunities within that half day to have a go. And at the end of it, you'll hopefully be in a better place to decide, do you actually want to become a coach or an instructor? So we're not expecting everybody to want to do it, but we're hoping that everybody will be able to make a decision, an informed decision at the end of it. So it gives them that little opportunity to dip their toe in the water without having to commit to a full course or anything. So following on from Discover Coaching and Instructing, somebody then might want to decide they want to become a qualified coach or instructor. So they want to go down the dinghy instructor type of route. That's a route available to them. But they might want to go down the racing route, in which case the Racing Coach Level 2 and the Racing Coach Level 3 are the programs for them. Racing Coach Level 2 is your first step on that journey, getting your first qualification, learning the basics of coaching, making sure that you understand how to run a safe, effective session, but hopefully a fun session, so that people that you're coaching can enjoy it. And it's a 2-day program. It's usually run over weekends, but we are willing to do other arrangements, half days, a series of half days and things like that, or maybe a Saturday followed by another Saturday later in the month, to try and make it as accessible as possible to different people. If you've done your Racing Coach Level 2 and you've got a bit more experience under your belt, and actually you find that I'm really starting to enjoy this, and you get the bug for coaching, well, maybe you've done a couple of years, and by the time you've got to this point and you want to take your coaching a bit further, then you're ready for the Racing Coach Level 3. The Racing Coach Level 3 is far more in depth than the Racing Coach Level 2, and it's far more bespoke. So we take that group of coaches, we try and understand them as well as we possibly can, and then we build the 3 weekends all around what we think they need to learn. And usually after a couple of years, they've already worked it out themselves. They've worked out what's good, what's not so good, what works, what doesn't work, and they come with that information, and we build on that. And over the 3 weekends, we take their coaching a lot further, and hopefully sort of finish off their journey as a coach, and they should feel very confident and competent by the end of that experience. So there's 3 sort of programs, if you like. There's Discover Coaching, which is really testing out, dipping your toe and helping you make that decision whether you want to become a coach. There's the Racing Coach Level 2, which is your basic and first step on the ladder. And then there's the Racing Coach Level 3, which is really about pushing your coaching to the next level.
So the videos are titled Connect with Coaching. What created that phrase was actually a program of online workshops that we've been running throughout 2020 and the first couple of months of 2021. And these are CPD opportunities for our race coach community within club and classes, and also race instructors. And we run these weekly on a Thursday evening and cover a range of coaching topics. And they're very informal discussions, but very much we bring in experts within the coaching field and allow them to host different conversations. For example, one could be on generating feedback throughout the coaching process. Another one could be looking at ideas around how you may coach decision making with your sailors at the various levels of competency of those that you work with.
Well, Dave and Tim, it's been great. It's fantastic to hear everything that's been going on. Good to know that you guys have been working hard while this whole COVID pandemic's taking place. I'm afraid I've actually got to shoot out on the water because we've got, funnily enough, we've got a pre-start training session to get done out here. So I'm going to leave you. But anyone that wants to speak, find out more with Dave and Tim, then please join the chat room afterwards. There's a chat function coming up. You should be able to get hold of them and find out a few more details and yeah, just get to know the system.
Okay, thank you, Stevie, for taking time out of your busy coaching program. And if you don't have the opportunity to join Dave and I in the chat room, you can email us using racecoachcourses@rya.org.uk for any further information on any of the content we've just been discussing. Thank you.
Thank you to Stevie, Dave and Tim. I'm really looking forward to checking out those videos. Remember, the RYA racing staff are in the exhibition hall on the RYA racing stand if you'd like to find out more on how you can get into coaching and how to progress your coaching career. Next up on the Knowledge Zone is another of the Dinghy Show favourites. We have Michael McNamara, rigging expert, giving top tips on how to set up your rig for all conditions.